Well, we are continuing our theme of automations and what AI can do for business. And I hope you caught my last episode with Brandon Metcalf, CEO, founder of Asymbl. This is a platform that's connected with the Salesforce environment. We're going to get into that a little bit at the end of our episode today. But today we're going to find out specifically what is an agent. You've been hearing a lot about this. What is an agent? And specifically, what are the steps that you can take to get your agents up and running to basically give yourself digital employees in your workflow? And I'm excited to bring back Brandon. How you doing, sir?
What's up, Tony? Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. So this is a topic that you know very, very, very well. I know you've been kind of talking more about it because you've kind of got your agents launched. So let's start with the basics. Tell people, what is an agent, and then help us understand like the blueprint. Like, how can we start using these bad boys to, speed our processes up?
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. It's great to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. Good to see you again.
The topics of agents is definitely on everyone's minds, right? And what is it and how to use it and all that. So when I talk about this, we do a lot in the space, and I can talk a lot about that later as to like what we actually do. But what I prefer to talk about is how we're actually using agents and what our journey's been to get them live. Like today we have 2 active agents, digital employees, and they're doing different tasks. So the way that I like to describe what an agent is not from a technical standpoint. And there's a lot of tech jargon we can get into about what makes an agent and what isn't an agent and all that. But to me, in its simplest form, an agent is a digital employee. You're going to give it a job description. You're going to give it, in that job description, certain tasks that you want it to do. You're going to give it then KPIs of how are you going to measure its success. And then ultimately you're going to have to manage it just like an employee. And if you look at it from that lens, it starts to make it a little less overwhelming about, okay, what is this? How do I make this work? What do I do with it? It's very different from just GPTs or just co-pilots or whatnot, because this is a full-fledged worker, if you will. That you set up differently, you coach differently, but at the end of the day, they're producing stuff in a similar way that a human employee would as well.
That's interesting. I mean, I'll just kind of stop you there, because I think sometimes when we get into something so new and radical like this, we just don't even really know like how we feel about it, how we're supposed to treat it, and you've just kind of said, look, just treat it like another employee. Yeah, there's some things to set it up, but that right there helped me. It's like, okay, my team, we have goals, we have our statistics, metrics. Give your agent metrics.
Yeah,
this is what I want you to accomplish.
Exactly. Let me give you a real life story with us. So we're using we have an SDR agent, and we've been in the process of getting that agent.
Now, for those who don't know what SDR means, what's SDR?
Sales development rep. So think of a sales development rep, sometimes called a BDR, business development rep, where that employee will take your leads, your prospects, pay attention to what they're doing, pay attention to, what we call a lead score, as far as like how are they interacting with your content and what are they watching and what are they clicking on and all of that, to see like what's really their interest in potentially buying your product or service. And then there's also lead grading, which is, does this potential prospect fit into like your typical buyer? And usually once you get a score and a grade to a certain point, you go, awesome, now we need to get that person in an active sales cycle, and how do we do that? So your SDR, your BDR is managing through a lot of leads, sending emails, sending text messages, phone calls, finding them on social media, engaging them with them, pretty much engaging with this prospect. and trying to have a conversation, and ideally trying to have a meaningful conversation and not just spamming them just to spam them, but really starting to figure out what they do, what they're looking to solve, can we solve it for them, and then starting the conversation with them about, hey, we potentially can help you solve the challenge you're looking to solve. And then the SDR would transition that lead to an account executive once they've been qualified and once there's been interest on the prospect side of, yeah, I do want to learn more and get to the next stage with you in the sales process. So that's really what an SDR does.
Yeah, they kind of manage that top of the funnel just to make sure we've got someone who is legitimately what we think, someone who's given enough interest, they're paying enough attention to what we're doing. Let's see if we can help them along with getting them, one-on-one interactions. And I guess that's very helpful if you have a lot of leads, if you have a lot of interest, right? A very frothy, top of funnel.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's awesome if you have the inbound leads to give that amount of work. But most companies also have an outbound structure as well, where you have targeted people that you want to go and you want to get them interested in your
True.
product or service. So you're doing both. You're doing both inbound and outbound. So you're taking the leads that come to you, nurturing them, guiding them through a process. You're also then pursuing people who haven't come to you, but who you think you can actually solve a problem for. And that BDR, SDR, that is their core role. Typically, when you look at hiring a human in that role, usually this is like first job out of college.
Right.
So if you think about where they're at typically in their career, very little actual work experience. Usually hungry, driven, exciting, will do what they need to do. They go give them a task, they're going to go crush it. Give them
gregarious, enthusiastic.
Give them structure, give them guidance. You have to spend a lot of time coaching them on, well, this is how you should communicate, and here's how you should write that email, and here's how you should respond to that email, and here's information about our product and services, and this is how we talk about them, and this is why, and this is how we want you to move them through the funnel to basically qualify them or not qualify them. We don't want you to spam a bunch of people. We want you to send meaningful, relevant information that could help them make a decision if we can help them or not, and also help us make a decision of, well, do we think we can actually help them or not, and guide that whole process, and then know when to hand it off, and then do this at volume of, how many prospects can you be managing, how many leads can you be managing at what time before you hand that off. So that is typically an SDR role. Usually that person's in the role for 1 to 2 to 3 years usually, and then they usually progress into an account executive type role where they're managing the actual deal cycle. So we actually have a fantastic BDR named Mitch. He's human. He's real. He's about to do
Shout out Mitch.
He's about to do a triathlon, which we're super excited to
watch
him do it.
Hold on now. Is that a full or
he's doing
a full
the real deal? So,
all right, way to go, Mitch.
I'm excited for that. So then, but we've also now hired Theodore Frank. Theodore is our first digital SDR. He is our first digital agent for SDRs.
I love that you've given him a name. It makes it it gives it a human, feel to it.
I think it helps. It helps to set the framework around what do we really think of Theodore in the job Theodore needs to do.
It's a little bit of a nerdy name, if you don't mind me saying. It's a little nerdy. It's a little old-fashioned.
There's a joke behind it between me and my co-founder, and depending on how Theodore's doing during the day, sometimes we'll call him Teddy when we like to see what he's like. Sometimes he's just Theodore, and sometimes he's Theodore Frank if we don't like what we're seeing. Or
exactly, something. Theodore Frank. We need to see better results.
But Theodore's on our sales leaderboards, and we had one of our team members on the sales side. One of our human team members saw that Theodore's activity was higher than his. And he's like, "Wait a second, what is going on here?"
Wow.
So naming
what a psyop you're running on them. I mean, that's great.
But naming him, giving him like context that you can relate to helps. It also helps to relate to other things like where you put them on the P&L and all the other things. But going back to like what we're doing and what an agent is and how to get started and all of those things. So the very first thing when we decided what were we going to do with digital labor, like we're in tech, we do a lot of stuff on the development side, and we have a lot of stuff going on with Salesforce with all of this. We decided to take the approach of, well, let's figure this out and let's try some stuff. before we reinvent the whole company just to be AI and all of that. So let's start with things that we deeply know and understand. And we started with the sales cycle, and we also started on the recruiting side. And I'll stay on the sales side to talk about Theodore. So then we started to investigate. Okay, well, let's look at our sales process. Let's look at the jobs to be done in the sales process and figure out where do we get the most value from humans. And usually it's empathy and reasoning and logic. It's handling complexity. It's also testing new things and trying to get certain reactions and see how things are responded to and all of that. That, especially like when we look at the human SDR side, is really important because now we can have Mitch really specialize of, hey, there's a complex, high value client we want to go win. Mitch, figure out your plan. That's not going to be the normal plan. You're going to have to try a lot of different things. Maybe you're going to have to go to events. You're going to have to do whatever. You got to get in front of them. And there's very much a human need for Mitch to do all of those things. But then on the other side of our shop, we do have a heavy inbound. We have a lot of inbound coming towards us from direct traffic and then also from partners. And then we also have outbound. Like, Asymbl was launched a couple of years ago. So some people are still figuring out that we exist, which is great because we get to go and talk about what we do. So how do we manage the inbound? How do we get the outbound going? And how do we let Mitch go and do what Mitch can do well with getting in front of people, making the human relationship and all of those things? The answer could have been, let's go hire 15 SDRs, and then we can manage all this. Okay, well, what's the cost of an SDR? The human cost of an SDR, base pay, employer costs, time
Yep,
off,
benefits, tax,
and
burden.
all the intangibles, all the software licenses they need, every like, what's the full cost? Okay, great. Well, what do we need to do when we hire a single human SDR? We've got to train them. We've got to put them through onboarding. We've got to enable them. We've got to teach them how we want them to do their job. And usually, again, these are more individuals that are more recently out of school. So it's not just even teaching them the context of our products and our services and how to exchange and how to send the proper email the way we'd want it sent using our language, our vocabulary, following our core values. But it's also then you got to manage them. Like, you got to coach them. You got to spend time with them. Hey, you did this right. You did this not so well. Focus here, focus there. Why are you on this account? Why is this getting delayed? Why did you answer the question like that? And also give them, you did this excellent, great job on getting these deals converted and all of that. So if you think about that context in the money and the time and the energy that goes into managing a single employee, I just said we need to hire 15 to accomplish what all the volume we had. So now you're managing 15 of those employees and following weekly one-on-ones, team meetings, all of it. It starts to become pretty big.
I'm exhausted just listening to the analogy.
So now let's flip that a little bit on its head, and let's think of Theodore. So for Theodore, he's not really that much different. I've got to define the job that he needs to be done. I've got to teach him our product and our services. I've got to guide him and coach him on, this is how we want you to communicate. This is how we want you to respond. This is how we want you to behave. And this is how we're going to measure your success. What's different about Theodore is I don't have a human conversation with him. I have a human conversation with my Salesforce administrator or whatever administrator is running your systems to say, hey, here's what I want Theodore to do. Go update him to do this stuff. And then every week, true story, our VP of Revenue, Ken, every week, Ken has to review Theodore's activity. Ken also has to review Mitch's activity. What are your emails? What are your texts? What are your meetings? Blah, blah, blah. Great. And then Ken has to figure out, what did you do well? Where do I need to give coaching? So for Mitch, Ken and Mitch will do that in Mitch's one-on-one. For Theodore, Ken will do that with Devesh, our system admin, to say, hey, Theodore did all these things well. I want to change it so he does these things better, and I want him to focus on XYZ. And the Devesh will go in and update Theodore to do those things, and every week Ken is doing that same cycle. The difference is Theodore has unlimited scalability. I can hire 15 Theodores by just increasing his limit. I don't need to go and train new Theodores. He's trained. His volume can just go up.
Yeah.
So that's the difference of like knowing specifically where you want to start, mapping out a role that really understand that you can create a process around of like what is this person or agent going to do? How do you define the deliverables? How do you measure those deliverables? And I think a big piece that I've not heard a lot of people talking with agents is what happens after you get them set up. They have to be managed, they have to be supervised, they have to be coached. And if you build that process in, then you really like the whole process is that of a managing an employee. You're doing the same things, you're just doing it a little bit differently.
Well, and what I like there too is that Theodore's not going to leave because it's a gut punch to you and your entire organization when, to the best of your ability, you think you've hired the right person, you got the right culture fit, you just went through a very long list of all the things you have to do, all the input, time, energy, thinking, and then in 7 months they leave. And it's like, oh God.
Or they get married, they're sick,
Uh, whatever, and I've got to start over.
Another
That's
example I give too is especially with how interesting the economic landscape is currently. Um, you know,
that it is.
business is booming, and some black swan event happens, and you have to reduce cost. If I had 15 SDRs that I had to lay off,
Great point.
that is not going to be received very well, and that's pretty devastating from a human standpoint of having to do that. If I have to scale down Theodore,
Just
who cares? You just turn it down. He doesn't have emotions. He's not going to be offended.
that is great. And no, you're not sending people to the Department of Labor, so that's another benefit. I think that's great. So, in when we look at these agents, Theodore in particular, that you have developed in house, does this agent? I'm just going to ask some setup questions so people understand more about the Asymbl platform. So this agent lives, if you will, inside of the Asymbl recruiting platform.
Yeah. So this
Explain how that works.
yeah, this is a good point to talk about the technology you use and the decisions you make. So I've heard where people have actually internally someone asked me, "Hey, can we just go and partner with all of these third-party AI agents and do whatever?" And my answer is like, what problem is this agent, this employee solving, and where do they fit in the workflow? How do they get the data? How do we manage them? How is it a fluid process as if we were hiring this employee as a human employee? Let's start there before we look at throwing a bunch of stuff on. In the market now, there's also what's called pre-packaged agents and a whole slew of other things, topics, prompts, actions, all of that, that are designed to do specific things. Theodore, he's not our agent. We didn't build Theodore. Our recruiting agent, which I could talk about how that agent's working as a recruiting coordinator for us to help us. We hired 100 people in 100 days and had 17,000 applications, and our recruiter agent managed that process for us or helped us manage that process, which I can talk about in a minute. But for Theodore, we didn't build him. We bought the Salesforce SDR agent that's part of Agentforce. So we didn't have to program him. We didn't have to like develop him. We did have to train him and coach him. And by training him, we had to give him the data that he needed. We needed to make sure he knew what rules to follow. But these prepackaged agents usually come with a whole series of rules. So one of the interesting things about Theodore is going back to the human example. When you hire an SDR fresh out of school, you can teach them all about your company and products and all that stuff. One nuance is what you also have to teach them is who's their buyer. So if you talk to a CEO, how do you have to behave? If you talk to a CIO, how did they behave? If you talk to a CFO, how did they behave? Because just looking at those three profiles in a deal cycle, those three individuals think about the deal cycle very, very differently. So a human SDR, we would have to train them. What Salesforce did with their SDR agent, that was already programmed in to give the agent knowledge of how to communicate with different levels of executives and what they respond to. So it's really thinking about the problem, like I said before, what's the role? What's the problem you're trying to solve? How does it fit into your overall operations? How does it work with your rest of your team? Which is another good point. These things need to collaborate. So they have to be where your human employees are. So they can, it's like another employee. So how do they work with each other? How does the information get moved along? And what overall process are you closing? So when you look at that, platform, solutions, all of that becomes foundational on how to set this up. So, we run on Salesforce just about every single part of our business and also develop Salesforce products. And we have a Salesforce consulting practice, all of that. So we're knee deep in Salesforce. We believe it's the best platform. I'm a little biased in that, so take that for what it is. But the agent, the SDR agent, we got up and running super quick. And now he's producing more results that making some of our sales team members want to catch up and be more
Jealous. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm clear on this. So this is an agent force application or
yeah, theater is
theater is okay, and that was programmed initially or created at Salesforce.
correct. Similar to if we talk about the other side of the house, what we do. So we build Salesforce based products. So we build products on top of Salesforce that weave into Salesforce, right? And I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And we focus on our software solution side, primarily in the staffing and corporate recruiting space. And again, using our example that I teased a little bit, right? We have huge volume, lots going on, companies growing like crazy. Beginning of 2025, we literally needed to hire 100 people in about 100 days. We hired 93 people in 94 days. No exaggeration. 17,000 interviews, 1,300 pre-screens, 800 interviews, got to 93 people. It's a lot. We had a recruiting team initially of one, then we added a second recruiter. All of our managers are just slammed with delivering for our clients, which is where we essentially want them to be. But you want to talk about the coordination around how do you go through 17,000 applications to identify who you want to pre-screen? How do you do the pre-screen? And how do you coordinate all the interviews, scheduling them, interview feedback, all of that stuff to then get to an offer process, to an acceptance process, to an onboarding process with a company that is 2 years old. So it's not like we had thousands of employees. We had like 40 something employees when we needed to hire another 100 employees. So all of this was just like incredible growth.
That was a black swan for you. I mean, trying to manage that.
Very good one, because the business is what drove it. We weren't growing just for the sake of growing. We were fulfilling client contracts and did so successfully.
Yeah, but that's a great analogy. I mean, anyone who's done any kind of hiring can attest that is a superhuman feat.
So how we did it was our recruiter agent. So our recruiter agent acted as a coordinator. So our human recruiter is immensely important through the whole process. Our recruiter agent helped with different things in the process. It didn't do the full process, but it enabled the rest of our team to do the full process. So taking 17,000 candidates, applications, job board applications, and helping to identify, okay, here's the ones that match what we're looking for the different jobs. Mind you, this was also global because we operations in various parts of the world. So did they match what we're looking for? Great. All right, now let's get this person over to a hiring manager. Does this look like the skill set that you want us to pre-screen? Cool. Let's do the pre-screen. Schedule that pre-screen. Feedback from the pre-screen. Great. Now let's move to the interview. Schedule that. Reschedule that if the candidate cancels. All of those steps. Our agents, the Asymbl recruiter agent, what we built, actually was helping coordinate various parts of that along the way, just like an internal recruiting coordinator would be. But works all the time. So it didn't matter if the person was applying in India or if the person was applying in the US, coordinator, agent could figure it out and know what to do and streamline the whole process. So
and manage all the time zones, which is,
yeah, and
that trips people up. I mean, all the time when you're running,
and
coordinating 94 interviews, for God's sakes.
Yeah, and you'll lose candidates because if you're not quick and responsive and all of those things that we know about in recruiting, you're going to lose the best candidates because they're in super high demand. So Theodore and our recruiter agent are very much the same, right? With the thought process of what's our challenge? We need to hire 100 people in 100 days. How do we do it? What's the job? How do we scope it? How do we define it? What do we want it to do? What do we want the output to be? How do we manage it? How do we supervise it? How do we coach it? All of those things. But we can crank the volume up on the agent. Whereas humans, people need to sleep.
It's yeah, you've got to there's a limit there. So I think anyone listening to this is going to kind of they should understand the power and the capability of an agent. So the question that people have in their heads right now is, okay, if I want to start using those types of agents, what steps do I take? Do they have to, number one, do they have okay, there's Aviante, there's Bullhorn, and there's all these other, platforms out there. So do they have to transition to a Salesforce platform to start using these agents?
You know,
This,
yeah. So to use our stuff, yes. And there's a litany of reasons I could tell you on for all of that, but I'm not going to.
no, it's okay. But this is why, I mean, there's so much out there that it's
But
like you use these, agents that Salesforce had created. So do they need to be on the Asymbl platform or do they need to be on the Salesforce platform, or is it a combination?
combination. So Asymbl woven into Salesforce. It's not a standalone platform. It is Salesforce. But I'll give you
Okay. See that's a good distinction.
some broader context. So like our company, we're a tech company. So we build software based applications for Salesforce, and then we're also a advisory services firm as well for customers in the Salesforce ecosystem. So we do staffing and recruiting. We also do other industries like legal, etc. Our magic is we don't just understand our products. Like our leadership team alone, our executive leadership teams, we have over 100 years of Salesforce experience. Our average Salesforce consultant, which is our whole consulting side of their business, every one of those individuals, each team member on average has 8 years of delivering Salesforce based products. So we understand Sales Cloud and Service Cloud and Marketing Cloud, name all the clouds and all of that. We have a deep foundational understanding of how to make a company successful using Salesforce. And then we also have a deep foundation of how to build successful staffing and recruiting software products on Salesforce because I started doing that way back in 2009 with my first company. And then we weave those things together. The other thing that is interesting about us, I think, is we use everything we talk about selling. We actively use Salesforce. We use Slack as our operating system. It's the system we're in all the time. It does a whole series of things for us that you wouldn't think Slack could do. Our agents are also in Slack as well. So we use the full soup to nuts. The way that I would approach this, if it wasn't me and wasn't in tech and doing what I'm doing, I'd want to look for who do I trust actually understands what the heck they're doing. I get hit up, which is interesting. I get hit up all the time by human BDRs all the time about I should look at their technology, and they've done no research to actually understand anything that we're doing to figure out that we actually do what you're
I
trying.
get that almost weekly.
Very annoying. So one of the things about, well, will a digital agent be as good as a human agent?
Should be better.
Okay, let's not go there. But I would want people to have experience knowing what they're doing in this realm. All of this stuff is new. Like we're fortunate we've been in beta programs with Salesforce for a couple of years now and all of this stuff. This stuff is changing every single day. And if we were just a software developer trying to develop software to do this stuff and we were not using it, we wouldn't understand it as well. If we were just a consulting company with our consulting hat saying this is how you should use it, but we've never used it, I don't think we're going to quite understand the challenges and the obstacles that you face. We decided we deeply believe this is where labor is going. We believe this is where the industry is going. How do we use this internally to really drive our business? And from that, now we just have a very experienced viewpoint on how to set it up, but also how to think about setting it up. And then we've learned from setting it up and running it, oh, well, how do we manage it and how do we grow it and how do we expand it now? So right now, we have other agents that are going to be coming on. We have internal services agent that manages all of our internal support cases. We have an onboarding agent. We have an RFP agent. We have engineering. I mean, we're just expanding it because we get it. We understand it. So if I was looking for a partner, a vendor to go to, that would be my number one question. You want to sell this agent? How are you using it? And what are your results? And demonstrate that to me so then I can feel comfortable. You actually know what you're talking about and you know why I should use an agent to do this specific job at my company for my industry.
I'm going to tell you there's an agent that Salesforce needs to make, and blow me away and tell me they already have it. The agent is there to help you transition off of your old system to go to theirs.
Oh, there's a lot of chatter around that conversation for sure.
Oh, I knew it.
I don't think just Salesforce though. I think that's a big topic because a lot of the stuff is so routine. It's going to be shifted. This is why it's so important. Like even that example is why it's so important. You don't necessarily need to go change your whole business today, but you need to start having conversations with intelligent people. And what I mean by intelligent people are people who have actually done this, people who are using this, people that know what it's like, and they can tell you the pros and the cons. Like Theodore wasn't perfect. Like we spent time getting Theodore to where we're at, and we still have to coach him and still have to train him and tell him, hey, don't do that, do this, blah, blah, blah. But we also have been around the block now and get it. So that's the biggest piece of advice. Well, I guess there's two from this whole show. One, think of agents as labor. Even so much so when I price out the agents, this is a labor cost going on my P&L, and I'm comparing Theodore's cost to the cost of human SDRs. And what does that look like? So I can quantify how much I can scale Theodore versus this and versus these the labor costs, all of that. Number one, treat it like human labor. And then two, find folks that are really using it and see what they're using it for. And you don't have to rush into this. It's not like it has to be turned on tomorrow, but you also don't have to go slow either. Like we started with Theodore, we started with our recruiter agent because we needed to solve both of those problems now. We need to solve our lead volume and our recruiting challenge. And now from that, internally, the team has gone, this is pretty cool. This isn't as threatening as we thought it could have been. This is providing real value. This is allowing us to compete with it from the sales side. This is helping us hire all these people and getting all these roles fulfilled and freeing me up to do other things I need to be doing. There's real meaningful value and belief internally at my company, which is also going to make it fun because now we're even able to talk even more so on a broader lens to all of our customers and prospects.
Yeah, and you've just really touched on something that I hope to do here at Timpl is that it needs to prove its value to the company as a whole because you're going to be the champion. So if you're listening to this episode, you're thinking, I want this for my company. I want to introduce this. And you're faced with all these other people in these siloed areas and all the information that they're in charge of. Are they going to be giving up? Are they going to become vulnerable? How are they going to feel? When you get a win and people can see it, now other people can come in and join in the process. And Brandon, you're probably just now experiencing that too. All the other leaders, all the other functions, they're now saying, well, gosh, you're using it on the BDR side. And in the can we use that in accounting?
It's really funny, especially for those leaders who have compensation plans based off of gross margins. And they're looking at this.
Oh, bingo.
A lot of agents are expensive. When they start to quantify it against total human cost.
And then the scale.
They're so expensive.
You're driving that margin down. Exactly. And suddenly people get bigger bonuses. And suddenly it's like, your brand is like, whoa, 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 we're not laying people off. We're not going to a full, agent force. Wow. We could just go on and on about this, but I think you've officially wetted the whistle, as they say, Brandon.
I'm definitely around if you want to talk more, or anyone else that wants to talk more.
Okay.
On this topic.
I know you do. You probably have dreams about Theodore. Don't answer that question. Don't answer that.
Too far, Tony. That's too far.
So what is the best way for people to connect, Brandon?
Brandon at Asymbl.com, which is spelled a little funky, so I'll move my thing.
We'll have links in the show notes.
Or LinkedIn. Like I'm all over LinkedIn, so that's definitely the easiest place.
You have been more on LinkedIn. Your marketing team is saying, Brandon, get out there, get out there. I've seen you. It's working. You're definitely getting out there. Great to see you again. And what I'm going to do, folks, if you didn't catch our first episode, I'll put a link so you can catch our first episode, so you can kind of watch these back to back, because Brandon hinted at where we went today in our first episode. So you're going to want to check that one out as well. All right, Brandon, I guess we'll have to follow up again and see how the agents have taken over for accounting. So your recruiter agent, did they have a name?
We haven't named it. So that's an internal thing. We've had a name for it, but we didn't align on it. So
okay, so there's still some tug of war who's going to land it. All right, so that's our little teaser. We're going to find out who the recruiting agent is, how they get named.
We have a new agent on our new website that's coming out that we have an internal contest to name what he is or she is. We don't know. So there's a lot of names going on. It's like naming the baby.
It is. It's a real thing. Okay, well, another great episode here with you, Brandon. Appreciate your time today, and you guys reach out and start your agent workforce today. We'll see you next time, Brandon.
Bye.